Dwayne Johnson never imagined his peaceful stroll through the park would turn into a moment that would change lives forever. But when he saw a young black girl in a wheelchair being harassed by a dangerous man, he knew he couldn't just walk away. What happens next will not only touch your heart, but also prove that real heroes still exist. Stay with us till the end to see how Dwayne's kindness transforms her life forever. And if you believe in the power of kindness, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. It was a rare quiet day for Dwayne Johnson, a break from the cameras, the chaos, and the relentless pace of his career. Dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, he blended into the park crowd, enjoying the crisp air and the scent of early spring. As he walked, his mind drifted, thoughts of family, of his daughters, of the simple joys that kept him grounded despite the whirlwind of fame. He watched joggers pass by, families feeding ducks by the pond, children laughing as they ran through the grass. It was a reminder of what truly mattered. On the other side of the park, a 13-year-old girl named Layla wheeled herself down the path. Life had dealt her a cruel hand. Diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, her body was weak from chemotherapy, and her once thick, curly hair was now hidden beneath a bright, colorful scarf. But despite it all, Layla was a fighter. Her parents always told her how strong and brave she was, though that didn't erase the fear she carried or the burden of knowing her family struggled to afford her treatments. For Layla, the park was a rare escape, a place where she could feel normal, surrounded by life and movement. Today, she had convinced her parents to let her go alone for a little while, promising to stay on the main paths and keep safe. As she reached the fountain, she paused, taking a deep breath and soaking in the peace, letting herself forget, even for a moment, the endless hospital visits and medical bills. Then, the moment shattered. A loud engine roared as a motorcycle tore down the pathway, breaking the calm. The rider, a rough-looking man in a leather jacket, unshaven, with a menacing glare, came to a stop near the fountain. He pulled off his helmet, scanning the park, his eyes landing on Layla. She looked away, hoping he'd move on. But he didn't. Instead, he strode toward her, his heavy boots thudding against the pavement. "What's a little girl like you doing out here all alone?" His voice was rough, mocking. Layla gripped the wheels of her chair but stayed quiet, hoping he'd lose interest. "I asked you a question," he pressed, stepping closer, towering over her. "Don't you have parents to watch over you?" "I'm just enjoying the park," Layla finally said, keeping her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest. The man let out a dark chuckle. "Enjoying the park, huh? Must be nice to take a little joyride in that fancy chair of yours." Her stomach tightened. She'd met rude people before, but something about this man felt different. More dangerous. "Look at you," he sneered, "sitting there like you own the place. People like you always think the world owes you something." Layla's hands clenched tighter on her wheels. She wished she had listened to her parents, wished she wasn't alone. "I don't want any trouble," she said softly, hoping to end whatever this was before it got worse. "Trouble?" The man smirked. "I'm not here to cause trouble." But his actions said otherwise. He stepped forward and placed his hand on the back of her wheelchair. Layla's heart pounded. "Stop," she said firmly, trying to sound braver than she felt. The man ignored her. Instead, he gave the wheelchair a rough shake. "What's the matter? Can't stand up for yourself?" He laughed at his own cruel joke. Layla's breath came fast and shallow. She tried to push his hand away, but he only tightened his grip. The park, once peaceful, now felt like a trap. And then, a deep, commanding voice cut through the air. "Let her go. Now." The man froze. Slowly, he turned his head. Standing just a few feet away, his broad frame casting a shadow over the scene, was Dwayne Johnson. "Her arm's stronger than I think, but some days it's hard to believe." Dwayne nodded, his voice gentle yet firm. "That's because being strong doesn't mean you never feel scared or tired. It means you keep going even when it's hard. And I can tell, you're a fighter, Layla." A small smile flickered across her face. "You sound like one of your movies." Dwayne laughed. "Well, maybe because I believe in what I say." He glanced around the park, then back at her. "What if I told you that you're not alone in this? That there are people who care and want to help?" Layla's expression shifted, a mix of hope and hesitation. "Like who?" Dwayne grinned. "Like me." She blinked, not fully understanding at first. "Wait, what do you mean?" He stood up, pulling out his phone. "I mean, I have some friends, good people, who'd love to help you get that surgery. And if your parents are okay with it, we're gonna make sure you get everything you need." Layla stared at him, her eyes widening. You do that for me?" "Of course." Dwayne smiled. "What's the point of having success if you can't use it to help people?" Tears welled up in Layla's eyes, but this time, they weren't from fear or sadness. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." Dwayne crouched down one last time. "Just say you'll keep fighting. That's all I need to hear." She nodded, wiping her tears with her sleeve, her heart feeling lighter than it had in a long time. And just like that, what started as a terrifying encounter turned into something life-changing. Because sometimes, real heroes don't just exist on the big screen. They walk among us, ready to step in when it matters most. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, kindness has the power to change lives. It meant changing Layla's life for the better. Then maybe, just maybe, this was exactly the kind of attention that could do some real good. He exhaled, his decision made. "All right, here's what we're gonna do. I don't want the focus on me, I want it on her. Set up a meeting with some media outlets, but only under one condition. We use this to push her fundraiser. I want that goal hit. No, I want it doubled." His agent hesitated for only a second before replying, "Got it. I'll start making calls." Dwayne hung up and immediately pulled up his social media. With millions of followers watching his every move, he knew the power his words carried. He opened a new post and started typing. "Meet Layla. She's 13 years old, braver than most grown men I know, and fighting a battle no kid should ever have to face. Today, I had the honor of meeting her. And now, we have the opportunity to help her. She needs life-saving surgery, and I'm calling on all of you, my friends, my family, my fans, to step up. Let's give her the future she deserves. Link in bio. Let's make this happen." Within minutes of posting, the internet exploded. Likes, shares, and donations flooded in. Celebrities joined in, athletes, influencers, everyone wanted to be part of something bigger. The fundraiser that had barely reached half its goal, it surpassed it in hours. By the next morning, it had tripled. But Dwayne wasn't done. Later that week, he showed up at Layla's doorstep. When her mother opened the door, her jaw dropped. "Dwayne?" He grinned. "Told you the world's a small place." Layla rolled up behind her mother, eyes wide. "Wait, what are you doing here?" Dwayne crouched down, looking her in the eye. "Just wanted to see my favorite fighter and tell her the news in person." Layla blinked. "News?" Dwayne pulled out his phone, turned the screen toward her. It showed the fundraiser's final number, fully funded, and then some. Enough for surgery, treatment, and support for her family. Layla gasped, covering her mouth. "No way, this can't be real." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "Dwayne, I don't know how to thank you." Dwayne shook his head. "You don't have to. This is all because of her. Her strength. Her story. The world just needed to see what I saw." Layla's voice was barely a whisper. "You changed my life." Dwayne smiled, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Nah, kid, you changed mine." Because sometimes, being a hero isn't about wearing a cape. It's about stepping up when someone needs you the most. And Layla? She wasn't just another kid in a tough situation anymore. She was a fighter, a survivor. And thanks to a chance encounter in the park, she had a second chance at life. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because kindness? It's the most powerful thing we've got. Can ask for, to be ready to fight, no matter how tough the battle. And you? You were born for this fight. Layla squeezed the stuffed lion, drawing strength from his words. You really think so? Dwayne chuckled. Kid, I've seen world champions, I've seen warriors, and I've seen people who refuse to back down. You're all three. Layla's parents watched the exchange, their hearts full of gratitude. Her father cleared his throat. I don't know how to thank you, Dwayne. You've done more for us than we ever could have imagined. Dwayne shook his head. Don't thank me. Just promise me one thing, when you get out of here, you keep chasing those dreams. Becoming a teacher, helping kids like yourself. The world needs more fighters like you. Layla nodded, gripping the lion even tighter. Deal. A nurse peeked into the room. It's time. The air grew heavy, but Dwayne leaned in, lowering his voice so only Layla could hear. You got this. And when you wake up, I better see that same big smile, all right? Layla took a deep breath and nodded. All right. Her parents kissed her forehead as the medical team wheeled her away. Dwayne stayed behind, standing with them as they watched the doors close behind her. Hours passed like slow-moving clouds. Dwayne refused to leave, waiting alongside her parents, keeping them company, making small talk when the silence became too much. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the doctor emerged. The surgery was a success. Relief crashed over the room. Layla's mother broke into quiet sobs, her father wiping his eyes. Dwayne exhaled, a grin spreading across his face. When they were finally allowed in, Layla was groggy but awake, the lion still clutched in her arms. As soon as she saw Dwayne, her lips curled into a tired but unmistakable smile. Told you I'd still be smiling. Dwayne let out a laugh, shaking his head. You really are something else, kid. In the weeks that followed, Layla's recovery became a story of hope and resilience. The donations helped cover not only her medical expenses, but also gave her family stability they hadn't known in years. Strangers from around the world sent messages of support, reminding her that she was never alone in this fight. And Dwayne? He checked in regularly, making sure she knew he wasn't just a celebrity who showed up for a moment and disappeared. He was in her corner for the long haul. Months later, at a charity gala raising awareness for children fighting serious illnesses, Layla stood on stage, healthier, stronger, beaming with confidence. And as she spoke about her journey, about the man who had stepped in at just the right moment, she looked out into the audience and met his eyes. Because of kindness, because of hope, and because someone believed in me when I needed it most, I'm here today. Dwayne smiled, proud beyond words. Because sometimes, the smallest moments, like a simple walk in the park, can change a life forever. And this time, it wasn't just Layla's life that had changed. It was his too. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because you never know whose life you might change, just by choosing to care. On his face as he watched Layla roll through the doors, bundled up in a warm hoodie, her eyes widening at the sight of so many people cheering for her. Whoa, she whispered, gripping the arms of her wheelchair. Her mother squeezed her shoulder. People have been following your journey, sweetheart. They wanted to be here for you. Layla's gaze darted to Dwayne, still trying to process the overwhelming love surrounding her. Did you do this? Dwayne shrugged with a smirk. Hey, don't look at me. You're the one inspiring people. The crowd erupted into applause, and a reporter stepped forward with a microphone. Layla, you've become a symbol of strength for so many. What would you like to say to everyone who supported you? Layla hesitated for a moment, then straightened her back. I just want to say, thank you. Thank you for believing in me, for helping my family when we didn't know what to do. And thank you, Dwayne, she turned to him, her eyes shining, for showing me that kindness can change everything. The applause grew louder, but Dwayne leaned down, speaking softly so only she could hear. You did this, kid. I just gave the world a reason to see how amazing you are. A few feet away, Layla's father wiped his eyes, his arm wrapped around his wife. Their daughter had faced the unimaginable, yet here she was, stronger than ever, with a future that once seemed impossible now fully within reach. That day wasn't just about Layla's recovery. It was about proving that one act of kindness can ripple into something much bigger than anyone could have imagined. And as Dwayne walked beside Layla, guiding her through the crowd of people who had come to celebrate her journey, he knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because in a world that can sometimes feel dark, it only takes one person to shine a little light, and that light can change everything. Layla sat at the worn wooden kitchen table, the warm afternoon sunlight streaming through the window, casting golden patterns across the pages of her open notebook. The house was quiet except for the faint ticking of the clock on the wall and the distant hum of her father working in the backyard. She twirled her pen between her fingers, staring at the blank page in front of her. The past few months had been a storm, a whirlwind of fear, pain, endless hospital visits, and whispered conversations when she wasn't supposed to hear. But through that storm, there had also been hope. Strength. A future she never imagined she'd have the chance to see. And now that she was here, on the other side of it, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Purpose. She let out a slow breath and touched the pen to the page. At first, the words came hesitantly, just a few shaky lines. Then, as if a dam had broken, the memories spilled out, flowing from her heart to her hand. She wrote about the fear that had lived in her chest for so long, about the nights when she lay awake wondering if she'd get to grow up. She wrote about the moment she thought no one would come to help her at the park. And then, she wrote about him. The way he had stepped in without hesitation. The way he had spoken to her, not like a fragile girl, not like a charity case, but like someone who mattered. The way he had given her the courage to believe in something beyond survival. She barely noticed her mother walking by until she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. What are you working on, sweetheart? Layla looked up, her eyes bright, no longer clouded with uncertainty. She smiled softly, gripping her pen a little tighter. My story. I think it's time I tell it. Her mother didn't say anything for a moment, just nodded, pride shining in her eyes. Then she leaned down and kissed the top of Layla's head. I can't wait to read it. Layla turned back to the notebook, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. She was fighting, not just for herself, but for every kid out there who needed to know they weren't alone. And miles away, in a quiet moment between meetings, Dwayne Johnson sat in his home, scrolling through his phone when a headline caught his eye. Cancer survivor Layla Mendez inspires thousands with her story of strength and hope. He clicked the link, skimming through the article, a slow smile creeping across his face as he read her words, powerful, raw, and unshakably determined. She was doing exactly what he always knew she could. And this was only the beginning. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can set off a chain reaction that changes lives forever. Layla sat at the kitchen table, a soft glow from the overhead light illuminating the pages of her notebook. She had been sketching absent-mindedly, the edges of the paper filled with little doodles of stars and flowers. A slight breeze drifted in through the open window, rustling the curtains and carrying with it the distant hum of the neighborhood settling in for the evening. She didn't notice her mother enter the room until she spoke, her voice warm with excitement. There's someone here to see you. Layla looked up, curious, her pencil pausing mid-stroke. Before she could ask who it was, the sound of heavy but familiar footsteps filled the doorway. Dwayne Johnson stepped inside, towering as always, but carrying a large box wrapped in colorful paper, his grin as bright as the ribbons tied around it. Layla's eyes widened in disbelief. You're back, she gasped, instantly pushing herself up from her chair and rushing to him. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around him in a tight hug, the kind of embrace that spoke more than words ever could. Dwayne let out a warm laugh, wrapping her in a strong, reassuring hug. Of course, I'm back. I told you, I'm not going anywhere. From the corner of the room, her parents watched, their smiles reflecting the gratitude they felt but could never quite put into words. The man who had once been just a face on a movie poster was now so much more than that. He had become family. Dwayne pulled back slightly, holding up the box with a playful smirk. I brought you something. Layla's eyes sparkled with excitement as she carefully tore into the wrapping paper, revealing a sleek, brand new laptop. Her fingers traced over the surface, as if making sure it was real. Is this, for me? She whispered, almost afraid to believe it. It's all yours, Dwayne confirmed, crouching down to meet her eye level. I heard you were thinking about writing your story. Now you've got everything you need to get started. Layla stared at the laptop, her hands trembling slightly. She had dreamed of telling her story, of putting her emotions into words, but she never imagined that someone like him would believe in her enough to make it happen. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't even know what to say. Dwayne smiled gently. You don't have to say anything. Just use it. Share your story. Inspire people. Without another word, Layla threw her arms around him again, this time holding on just a little longer. I will, she whispered. I promise. Over the next few days, Layla barely left her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she poured her thoughts onto the screen. She wrote about the endless doctor visits, the moments of fear, the uncertainty that had followed her every step. She wrote about the pain, but also about the moments of hope, the strangers who had sent her messages of encouragement, the friends she had made in the hospital, and most of all, the kindness of one man who had stepped into her life when she least expected it. Her parents watched from a distance, their hearts swelling with pride as they saw the light in their daughter's eyes return. Dwayne continued to check in, offering encouragement and helping her connect with publishers who believed her story needed to be heard. And soon, the world was listening. News outlets began to pick up on Layla's journey, her story spreading like wildfire. Social media buzzed with messages of support, and donations continued pouring into the foundation that had been created in her name. Layla wasn't just telling her story, she was changing lives. One evening, she sat in the living room with her parents and Dwayne, watching the news as a segment about her played on the screen. The reporter's voice carried through the room, highlighting her resilience, her determination, and the growing impact of her foundation. Layla's mother wiped away tears. You've come so far, she whispered, squeezing her daughter's hand. Layla turned to Dwayne, her voice thick with emotion. I couldn't have done it without you. Dwayne shook his head. You had it in you all along. I just helped you see it. As the news segment ended, Layla took a deep breath, her eyes shining with newfound confidence. I want to do more, she said suddenly. I want to help other kids like me. I don't want anyone to feel as scared and alone as I did. Her father smiled, his eyes filled with pride. And you will. Dwayne leaned forward, a serious but excited look in his eyes. I've been thinking about that too. What if we start something together? A foundation in your name, something that helps families dealing with cancer, provides resources, and shares stories of hope. Layla's mouth dropped open slightly. Wait, you mean it? Absolutely, Dwayne said, nodding. You've already made a difference, Layla. This would be a way to keep that going. To help even more people. Her parents exchanged a glance before her mother nodded, smiling. We're in. Layla beamed, her heart pounding with excitement. Then let's do it. Over the next few months, the Layla Hope Foundation was born. With Dwayne's support and Layla's story at the heart of its mission, the foundation quickly gained recognition. They organized fundraisers, charity events, and hospital outreach programs. Layla traveled with Dwayne to speak at events, meeting other children battling cancer, offering them encouragement, and reminding them that they were never alone. Her once soft-spoken voice had become a beacon of hope, reaching thousands, maybe even millions, of people who needed to hear it. One evening, after a long day of meetings and planning, Layla and Dwayne sat outside a community center, looking up at the night sky. The stars twinkled above them, the air crisp and calm. "Do you ever wonder why things happen the way they do?" Layla asked, her voice thoughtful. Dwayne nodded slowly. "All the time. But I've learned it's not about the why. It's about what we do with it. How we choose to move forward." Layla smiled softly, hugging her arms around herself. "I'm glad you were in that park that day." Dwayne grinned. "Me too. It changed my life." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything they had built settling in. "I used to be scared of the future," Layla admitted. "But now, I'm excited." "That's how it should be," Dwayne said. "The future's yours, Layla. Go make it everything you want it to be." As they stood to leave, Dwayne placed a hand on her shoulder, his expression warm and full of pride. "You're a hero, you know that?" Layla laughed softly, shaking her head. "I had a pretty great example." Together, they walked into the night, their steps steady and sure. The world was changing, one story, one act of kindness at a time. And Layla knew, without a doubt, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. And that's how a simple act of kindness from Dwayne Johnson saved a young girl's life and gave her hope for the future. Remember, it doesn't take much to change someone's world. Sometimes, just showing up can make all the difference. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us share more inspiring stories. And let us know in the comments, where are you watching from?